participants to join this call. And obviously, thank you to our host and host, Ms. Dr. Bhavna. So before I start, right, introducing our chief guest, right, let's touch upon a reason that why we are having this call today. So we thought that why don't we look at stress? There's a lot of topic around stress. There's a lot of debate around work hours, etc. We said, okay, why not have a topic curated on stress, right? And who better than Dr. Bhavna, the Gotham? I know her from almost 15 years now, personally, and she's fab. She's my go-to doctor. She's on my speed dial for the day I'm not in my right senses, right? And definitely she's been a great help and a great rescue, right? I take pleasure in introducing Dr. Bhavna. A, she's the founder of Embrace Life, right? B, on her pedigree side, she's got a master's in hospital administration, backed by an MBBS. She's a psychotherapist and functional medicine practitioner and metabolic and mental health coach. And there are a lot of ands, but these are the ones that I would use to summarize her, right? So Dr. Bhavna, welcome to our program. Thank you so much for taking out time and for sharing your pearls of wisdom with us. So thank you so much for coming for this program, Dr. Bhavna.
Thank you, Narayan, that you thought of finally finding a good fit for me and the good work that you do around. So I think I'm extremely excited and looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, before we get going with the topic, Dr. Bhavna, my first question, like setting the foundation or setting the context, let's talk about stress. What do we mean stress? What do we mean by the word stress? Because I think so everybody looks at stress or interprets the word stress the way they feel is right? And as a backup or in continuation to that, how do you define mental resilience as an antidote to it? So, interesting to know your perspective on stress. How do you define stress? And what is the antidote to it? So over to you.
Yes. So Narayan, like you rightly pointed out, we all experience stress. We all talk about stress too, but surprisingly, our entire understanding of stress is so myopic. We usually land up believing that stress is something which is emotional, or stress is something which is only related to this big, major life turning events that you experience. We usually call it a very vague concept, and it goes way beyond just feeling very overwhelmed. So, stress is not just a feeling. Stress has a physiological component, it has a psychological component. When I say that, what I mean is there's a body reaction that actually happens to stress, and then there is a mental health cascade which happens to stress too. And whenever you encounter a stressor, and the stressor can be anything, again, it could be a looming deadline, it could be the death of a loved one, it could even be a simple argument that you're having with your loved ones. Your body is going to go into a cascade of physiological reactions because it has to get activated. It has to either get into a fight mode or a flight mode or a freeze mode. So this entire trigger of reactions, whether it's your heart rate increasing, your breath work increasing, your stress hormones now suddenly increasing in numbers, cortisol, adrenaline, all of these start happening one by one, right? So stress doesn't just come from these life altering events, even every day of our current lives. I say current because these were not existing, let's say, a few 60, 70 years back, where you are constantly in the need to navigate traffic jams. You're constantly in the need to report somewhere or the other. You're constantly walking around with a to-do list in your hand. Stress has now become a chronic, subtle aspect of our constant living. There's this constant noise of stress at the background all the time. So this is not just a feeling which happens in your head or your heart. Being in stress for a prolonged period of time, in fact, is going to impact how you function physically, how you function mentally, how you behave with people around. It has the ability to actually shape your physical health. It has the ability to shape your relationships. It has the ability to shape you as a person, you know. So stress is a very, very multi-dimensional concept. And once we understand that this is how big stress is, from a physical aspect, social aspect, relationship aspect, then we understand that this antidote that we talk about to stress, which is mental resilience, also has to be multidimensional. It cannot be like a typical pill which you take to cure your headache or a pill that you take to cure your stomach ache. It has to come from multiple components too. So when we talk about mental resilience, It is not just about being adaptable. I got through the stress. It's not just about bouncing back. I came back from something big, but it is also about being able to come to an equilibrium, that emotional equilibrium that you had before stress. You should be able to come back to it. If you come back to a level which is still a non-functioning level, which is still a level which is not your productive best, then you have not battled stress correctly. Okay, it needs further work to be done. So this mental resilience that we talk about as an antidote to stress, it also is about developing this cognitive flexibility, being able to find out options in life, being able to discover what other ways I can actually help myself or solve a particular problem, and how do I transform this particular challenging time into a time of personal growth. So it doesn't get limited to managing that situation or that event, but what do I learn from it? What do I implement, and how do I grow from it as I move forward? So at the end of the day, I always tell people, while you have very little control over stress, because that's happening a lot in your external environment, you have control over how you respond to it, and you have control over the kind of mental resilience you develop, because resilience is a learned behavior. It is a skill, and all of us can learn that.
No, interesting and spot on, Dr. Bhavna. All you mentioned, all the points that you mentioned are so pragmatic and relatable, right? I also believe that with a lot of devices around us, right, and with a lot of social media around us, just by, you know, say a little bit of screen time and watching Instagram induces a lot of stress because you're always seeing the good things that people are putting. So you believe that, oh, okay, my life isn't that good compared to what people are putting,
Everybody else
right?
has it sorted except you.
Exactly. Everybody's sorted, everybody's lucky except you.
Right.
And there is this psychological stress that you develop, right? There is this inferiority complex that somebody innately develops, obviously will not voice it, right?
Yeah.
Also, I believe that there's a lot of upbringing that plays a big part in our concept of dealing with stress, right? Like, if you've been brought up in an environment where you don't know how to handle altercations, you don't know how to handle conflicts. So everything kind of spikes up, right? Now, having said that, how do you assess, or how would you say that, what's the relationship between physical and mental resilience? And how can we leverage the connection between the two? So what's your take on that? And just to add the physical part, at least my limited understanding so far has been that, oh, you got a headache, you go for a oil jumpy, maybe it will just clear the brain fog that you're carrying. Do a shoulder massage or go for a walk, or take a deep breath and you're sorted in 10 minutes. Is that universal? Is that long term? Or is it something, a quick fix or a jugaad that people have come up which doesn't last long? What's your take on that?
So, as part of the practice that I do, which is more of functional medicine and which is more of holistic medicine, I rarely divide any problem into physical and a mental health problem. Okay. For me, both have to go hand in hand, because the solutions also go hand in hand. So when we talk about physical health and your mental wellness are more of a partnership. Okay, they are coexisting at any given point of time. They are communicating with each other at any given point of time, and no matter which area of your life is currently falling short, you can always take aid of the next partner to build it up. It's like that. So let me give you an example. For example, now research has proven that getting into physical activity has a lot of positive impact on your emotional health, on your mental health, because it regulates your endorphins. It's a natural mood booster. That cardiovascular activity is also related to your mental flexibility. you know Secondly, let's say your nutrition. Today it has been proven that 90% of your happy hormones, which we call the serotonin, is actually present in your gut. It is not even present in your brain. Okay, so you are literally what you eat. That good mood, that good personality is very closely linked to your gut, right? And then we cannot overlook the impact that something as simple as sleep has. Just not being in the right sleep pattern, the right sleep duration for a prolonged period of time is enough to cause mood disorders out here. Is enough to cause your immunity to be hampered. It's enough to cause your stress management skills to go poor. So physical health has such a vast impact on how you feel, how you manage yourself, how you encounter stress. On the other side, your current mental resilience also impacts your physical health. So how resilient I am, how I view life, how I manage my challenges currently will also ensure what kind of motivation I have to look after myself, to look after my physical health. This is also going to impact the kind of immunity I have. Okay, so whichever one we talk about, whether you come with a challenge of physical health or you come with a challenge of mental health, in the end, you will find that the contribution has to come from both the ends to genuinely develop long lasting well being, whether it's physical well being or mental well being. And how do you leverage something like this? But after understanding that both your physical and mental health are just so strongly linked, you just have to devise certain non negotiables, certain must do's for every single day. And they can be as simple as ensuring that there is a daily movement that you commit to. However simple it is, even if it's a 15-minute walk, but it's done every single day. There's a daily commitment to mindfulness, there's a daily commitment to getting enough rest every single day. So there are certain non negotiables that you devise, which you say that no matter how I'm feeling, good, bad, no matter physically, emotionally, how I'm challenged, these are the things that I'm not going to compromise on. And this is how we keep leveraging one against the other. The day my physical health is low, I'll ensure that my built up emotional resilience and mental resilience comes in to take care of it. And the day my mental health seems to be challenged, that's the day I use my physical health to encounter and lift it up. So this is how we really work with the two together.
No, makes sense. Makes sense. I can relate to the point where you mentioned about leveraging the other aspect, as in leveraging your physical strength to fill the short gap of mental weakness and vice versa. So makes sense. I understand where you're coming from. But how easy is it, or how pragmatic is it for laymen like us, or average people like us, to understand and switch on and switch off that mode? Because we all are so used to short gap or jugaad, or so to say, tried and tested, immediate, because we all are looking for instant gratification. So we want immediate solutions, right? So what are the key differences between, I would say, a short-term stroke,
Yeah.
non-medical coping mechanism versus true mental health resilience? How is that? Because I'm sure a lot of people on this call, like 160 people on this call, they would have not heard these jargons of cortisol, parasympathetic, right?
Yeah.
So what's your take on that? How can one go about handling it?
Okay. So let me first correct that part where you said normal people, like that we are all on the same fighting plane at any given point of time. Despite whatever qualification and experiences I come in, I have the same challenges as anybody who's probably not a professional. So the challenges don't differ. Only thing is that yes, probably I have just created a better toolkit and I know how to use it a little better, but the challenges still remain the same. I fail on days too. Okay, where I have to say, okay, you know what, tomorrow I'll start again fresh. So this key difference that you're talking about is what we differentiate a coping mechanism from true mental resilience. Okay, coping mechanism, again, it is a must, it is a necessity, but the key difference is that they need not always be healthy. So, for example, a healthy coping mechanism would be that you quieten yourself, go into a room and say, you know what, I need to breathe before I actually do what I have to do next. That's a good, healthy coping mechanism. On the other hand, you could have developed a coping mechanism where you actually pick up your phone and start scrolling reels. Okay, those endless nights where we know we have to sleep, where we know I have to get up early and commit to work, and I'm still scrolling something. Okay, that's an unhealthy coping mechanism, but it is a coping mechanism indeed. It is somewhere trying to help you get through your anxiety, right? Smoking, substance abuse, alcohol, they are all coping mechanisms because there was a stressor that you did not know how to handle. And over a period of time, just because I did not challenge this coping mechanism, after the quick relief that it gave me, I continued using it again and again. It actually became my go-to mechanism for all challenges. Okay. However, if you actually look at really impactful mental resilience, that has to come from something which is transformative. It has to be a healthier option. It has to be an option which causes a long term impact in your health. It doesn't just give you a short term relief. It is something which will ensure that your problems that you have encountered, either the problems start dwindling off or you get much better at solving them. If you're finding yourself reaching out for a coping mechanism every single time and the same problems keep cropping up, then that means there's a disjoint between what you're using as a tool and the problem. It's not matching. Okay. And secondly, a mental resilience aspect or mental resilience coping aspect is not going to hamper your health. It has to contribute to your health in some way or the other. A coping mechanism may or may not do that for you. You know, it can actually hamper the poor coping mechanisms will actually hamper your current status. So don't get me wrong, coping mechanisms have their own place. Sometimes when we are challenged by a very sudden threat, we need a quick coping mechanism. We use a quick coping mechanism. However, there has to be an awareness that, you know what, now that that threat has subsided, I need to take assessment of the situation. I need to come up with a better tool next time. The next time, if this happens, I am not going to allow the same coping mechanism to be my go-to mechanism. You know, and mostly you will realize that when you use a coping mechanism, they're generally external. It'll be a tool. It'll be that cigarette or that alcohol, or that a healthier one would be that jog that you do. So they're generally external tools that you're using. Whereas when we talk about that internal strength to develop, that internal coping mechanism or resilience that you have to develop, you are actually becoming more self-sufficient, more self-efficient in managing it. And there are a whole lot of other components to it. You'll become, let's say, you will develop a better EQ, you develop a better communication skill, you develop a better conflict management skills. Those are things that you develop internally, which become your resilience toolkit. You know, so short-term coping, yes, it has its place, but it can be unhealthy. There has to be this absolute awareness. We become creatures of this unhealthy coping mechanisms. We become defined by these unhealthy coping mechanisms. They become the way in which we relate to the world and to other people. Whereas when it's a proper resilient tool that you've developed, when it's a proper emotional and mental health resilience you've developed, you'll realize that you're also developing healthier spheres in which you're roaming around.
Interesting. You know, it brings me to a different. Does the environment impact us? It brings me to a new point that how much of a impact it has on us, the environment, right?
Yeah.
As you rightly mentioned, we are going to office, stuck in traffic, everybody's honking. You will see your stress levels going up, right? You believe that, oh, I'm potentially going to be late. Your stress level goes up, right? Maybe somebody's having a bad day, he bumps into you and has some cuss words coming your way, right? So you want to respond, the urge to respond. So I strongly believe that environment also induces stress to some extent or to a large extent. And definitely our coping mechanisms or our response to external factors determine how we manage our stress. So how does environment contribute, or rather, let me say, to what degree and how much dent does an environment cause in our current steady state of mind? And what are your recommendations that if at all, if somebody's impacted by external factors, right? How can one respond to it? So you have two options: respond and react. How would a human body respond or a human brain respond to?
Right, right. So, Rhythm, if we could just share the first slide, because I would like to show everyone what is this environment that we are talking about when we talk about, yes. So is everybody able to view that? So when we talk about environment, there are two aspects to it. There is an internal environment inside you, and there's an external environment which is happening outside you. So when I say internal environment, what is it actually? It's your physical health. On that particular day, on that particular moment, how much sleep did I have? What's my hydration level? Am I battling any chronic disease or any chronic condition at that time? What is my emotional health status? What is my mental health status? How sad, angry, or depressed I am? Okay, so those are all factors which create an internal environment. On days when I know that my internal environment is better, I may be able to take up bigger challenges and handle bigger stresses. But there are days when your internal environment just doesn't let you cope even with the smallest of issues happening outside. Similarly, there are external environmental factors. External factors such as, you know, your social support, your social structures. How are your relationships? What's the quality of those relationships that are happening around you? What is your financial status? What is your work-life balance? What or how frequently are these stressors happening? One after the other, if there are plenty of stressors coming in, it's enough to overwhelm you. Maybe if they come one by one, you still will have enough coping skills available, enough bandwidth available to deal with them. So all these things get defined into an internal environment and an external environment. On a great day, probably both are equally balanced, and you are a superpower. At the height of your superpower to manage any stressor. there are going to be days when one of them is going to be challenged, either the external one or the internal one. And that is exactly what happens with most of us in most cases. Let me give an example. Like you rightly said, Mumbai people are very, very used to the Mumbai traffic, which is only worsening, let's say, by the day. Now, imagine that you are sitting in a car and you are stuck in this godforsaken traffic and you are getting late for a meeting. You're screaming, you're palpitating, you're honking, you're doing everything. Next time, have a look around you. What is happening? What are people in the other vehicles doing? Now, every single person is not honking, every single person is not looking stressed out. Okay. So if there are these college kids who are sitting in an auto rickshaw besides you, they would be extremely chilled because they would be very happy that they're missing out a lecture, or they're very happy that they don't have to go home too early, because for them the outcome is very different. Whereas for you, you're expecting a different outcome. You're trying to control a very different outcome. So all of us are responding very, very differently to exactly the same challenge or the same stressor. There would be somebody sitting in a car who's probably put on his music and is enjoying the music, that ठीक है यार अटके हैं traffic में, let me listen to the next song, I would like to do that. Okay, that's a very, very different reaction to it. Then that happens because for some reason either our internal environment or our external environment is different. Maybe, I know that my boss is going to be extremely, extremely difficult about even a 1 minute delay. That's my external environment, and I feel challenged. On the other hand, if I'm going back home and it's only by myself, I don't have anybody that I have to answer to, I'm okay with the delay which is happening. So we have to realize that whatever we are feeling at that moment, which is a component which is responding to it. Is it internally? Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Am I tired? Did I not sleep well? Is that why I'm reacting like this? Or is it that the environment around me is that stressful? Because a lot of times, once we are able to judge that, whether it's my internal environment which is difficult or the external one, we are able to understand whether I can control it or not. For example, if I know, yeah, maybe I'm just hungry, maybe I'm just sleepy, maybe I'm just tired, I know I'm going to grab my water bottle to drink. Maybe I just grab something to eat. Maybe I just do breathing exercise sitting out there for some time, because that I can control. The minute I realize now I'm stuck in a traffic and I'm going to miss a meeting and I can't help it, I will do the best that I can. I will probably call up somebody and inform them that I'm sorry, I'm stuck out here. So it's very important to understand which part of your environment is being challenged. Okay. And that is the reason why we say that environment needs to get defined. Everything is an environment. A human being is a product of its ecosystem. We are not functioning in isolation or in vacuum. We are all at any given point of time product of our ecosystem. How did I start my morning? Did I have a fight with my spouse? Did my maid not come to work? Or did my child throw a tantrum before going to school? Or somebody is unwell in my house? It starts from the time you wake up to the time you end. It determines how you are going to function that day. Okay, so everybody gets surprised with the idea that today I'm a very moody personality, today I'm a very happy personality, today I'm a very sorted personality. The challenges remain the same. It's just that you respond differently because you feel differently at that moment, right? So this is what we call as the impact of your environment on how you handle stress.
Brilliant. I think so. Quite relatable, right? Especially the way of the options that you mentioned about external factors and what you can control, what you can't control, and if what you can't control, how you deal with them. So when you are giving the example that you are in the car in the traffic, you're stuck, you're about to get late, and you call them in advance and inform them I'll be late. Yes, I remember whenever I have done that, it kind of lowers my stress levels. That okay, I've given it. Yeah, I do fear that I'll be judged for not being on time, but I'm like, okay, at least the damage, I've done as much damage control I could, right? So by informing and not showing up late and saying sorry 5 times, that sorry, I'm late, and yeah, at least the journey from the place to the destination, it has kind of lowered it. Yes, I completely relate, and I'm sure a lot of people on this call will understand that. Now, before I come to
this slide.
So, before I come to say the practical strategies, let's talk about a few implementation aspects, right? We talk about meditation, we talk about pranayam, breathing, talk about walks. We all are a function of procrastination, right? We love to find reasons for not doing it, including me, right? There are some other practical aspects or other implementation aspects that people can refer, like going for a walk, etc. But you will see that a lot of people start with enthusiasm, but for some reason it tapers down, right?
Right.
And some excuses come in that, sorry, A, B, C happened and I could not do it. So what are the biggest obstacles people face when trying to build mental resilience, in your opinion, and how can they overcome it? Like, I'm a victim of a couple of procrastination. So, let's hear from you that what are the obstacles that mentally people face and what are the best ways to overcome them?
So, every time somebody asks me this question on what these are my obstacles, I always tell them that I think we are our biggest obstacle. Okay? There is no other obstacle or any external obstacle coming in our way. Especially, number one is the kind of talk we have with ourselves. I think we hold our own selves to some very unreasonable standards, Narayan, at any given point of time. I will be very lenient with anybody else. The minute a friend of mine comes to me and says, you know what, I messed up at my work. I think I may lose my job. How could I be like this? My first words to her are going to be full of empathy. And I'm going to say, oh, don't worry. Oh, we'll find a solution. But the minute the same thing applies to me, it's the end of the world. How could you do that? You're such a loser. You're pathetic. You can't do one thing properly. So I think we are our worst critics. It is in fact, in building up resilience, we are the worst obstacle that comes in the way because we want perfection at any given point of time. We cannot handle the fact that, like any other skill, resilience will also be a skill. So I will fail on days and I will have to re-practice on days, and I will have to keep coming back multiple times. So number one is this very harsh self-criticism. I think the second thing which comes in the way of developing any resilience is our fear of change, our fear of failure. I want things to be status quo. I'm not happy with status quo, but I would still want things to be status quo. Okay, because it's the unknown enemy which seems to be much bigger than my known enemy. So I'm ready to stay miserable. I'm ready to continue being stuck in this position. I know what needs to be done, but I'm so afraid of that change that I don't want to take the next step. Yeah. So that is the second thing which comes in. The third important thing, before which I really don't blame people, I think it's this lack of awareness of our own selves. I mean, I must say this out here very, very openly, that our social structures, right from our birth to our death, are not designed to make us self-aware. That should have been their job. Whether it's our homes, whether it's our schools, whether it's our workplaces, we just have the least amount of insight on ourselves. So we will be the most amazing political analysts of the global warfare which is happening. We will be the most amazing financial analysts of markets. But when it comes to self-analysis, I think our insights are practically zero. What are the emotions I'm challenged by? Why do I feel what I feel? Where did this actually start? What do something as simple as what do I want from life? I have no idea. I know everything I don't want from life. I don't know what I want from life. So we really have very, very poor emotional awareness. Another thing that challenges people on developing resilience is the lack of support systems. I think having healthy relationships, cultivating healthy relationships, healthy communities around you is now becoming tougher and tougher. It's becoming a bigger challenge. And hence, a lot of times, I think, even if we want to be resilient, we find it very difficult to go and find that support to be resilient. We need support. We can't help it. We are designed to be in social structures. We are not designed to be in isolations. And these things, I think, being in a constant cycle of feeling challenged, not knowing the way out, not developing the right skills, keeps us on a chronic stress platform at any given point of time. I mean, every time in my practice, when people come with a challenge, I'm like, okay, this is a challenge. But if I have to ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, is life stress-free in other areas? And you'll be surprised to know they'll say, oh, no, it's not fine in any other area. But right now, this is a problem, this particular area. So if at any given moment, we are battling chronic stress, we are battling chronic burnout, and we cannot, it's like running a car without fuel. It will burn off. That same thing happens to your body. So that adrenal fatigue which comes in, the physical breakdown that comes in, the depression, the anxiety, all of these are because we've been on a prolonged run of trying to manage stress and we've not been able to stop it. We've not been able to lay down a boundary which says, you know what, now for the next 24 hours, nobody do anything. I do not want to communicate. I don't want to say yes to any commitment. I need to breathe. I need to find out my next step. We don't give our own selves that grace. Whether it is mothers, whether it is working professionals, whether it is parents, whether it is newly married couples, everything is one challenge after another. Even the happy moments in life are stressful. Let's be honest about it. Okay, so in fact, it is quite surprising that when research lists down the top stressors of life, marriage comes right with divorce out there. Okay, so just planning a marriage in India, I think everybody agrees, just planning a wedding by itself is the most stressful thing, although that should be the happiest moment of your life out there. Okay, so stress doesn't just come from the unhappy things, the sad things, it also comes from the happy things. So on any given day you are constantly stressed about something or the other, and then your systems fail, they burn off. So all of these things together compound the issue and become the bigger challenge on developing mental resilience. You don't know where to start. Okay, so unless we get this holistic view that it has to start somewhere, it has to start small, it has to start consistent, and there will be failures, there is no other way to develop mental resilience.
Interesting. In fact, when you were mentioning, what came to my mind is that happy stress, right, is often referred as anxiety in our society, that, oh, he's anxious, or okay, he's getting nervous. So, what happens is your brain gets programmed that, okay, stress means negative,
Yeah.
happy means nervous, right? Like I remember for exams as kids, when you were nervous that, okay, I got my exam in the next 30 minutes, right? So you were nervous. Actually, you were stressed, but what, the emotion that people give out, and people brand that emotion that, oh, he's nervous, he's just anxious about his results. Nobody says stress. So, you're programmed since childhood to put a negative connotation to stress, that only
Correct.
in negative situations you are stressed. Otherwise, you are happy, you're nervous, you're
Yeah.
nervous, etc. And B, how much of overthinking do you think is a contributor to stress, right? Like I am a victim of two fronts, overthinking and self-sabotage, right?
Yeah.
I love the example that you gave, that we are our worst self-critic, right? Because when my colleague or my team members do a mistake, I'll say, okay, koi baat nahi, seek lenge, kar lenge. But when I do a mistake, I kill myself that, oh, I am the team lead. How can I make this mistake? This is not expected out of me, and I kind of pull myself down and then overthink that what will my teammates think, what will my CEO think, what will A, B, C think, etc. I'm sure this plays a lot with your chemicals in your head, right? And then kind of, derails you from thinking straight, right? And it's adding stress, right? So, and one more question that I have for you from the resilience standpoint: how much of counseling does what role does counseling play here? Because I believe that Indian society is not open to counseling, right?
Yeah.
Let's face it. There's this beautiful movie by Shah Rukh Khan and Alia Bhatt, Dear Zindagi, right? Where they kind of show that how negative view society has towards counseling, right?
Right.
And etc. So maybe how can people take up counseling as simple as taking discipline, as in, how do we make people comfortable with the concept that, okay, you're unwell mentally, or you're disturbed, or you're troubled, you want to speak to somebody, why don't you go to a counselor, right? So because today the word counselor is connected in a negative connotation, that psychiatrist, oh, he's mad, ये आदमी पागल है, पागल के डॉक्टर के पास जा रहा है, right? So how do you break the myth on that? You're a counselor yourself, so how do you
Yes.
break it?
So, primarily, like I said, when we started off the discussion, Narayan, where we said that we can't create a differentiating line between physical health and mental health. I think the first step is to stop calling them as two different things. They are health, period. Okay. So we have to understand that you not feeling great, you not feeling motivated on a given day cannot be your normal, cannot be a new normal. Just the way a constant ache or pain is not your new normal. Okay, so one is this classification of health into these other verticals. Number two, we have to stop believing that mental resilience, mental health challenges are more to do with predictors of your success in life, predictors of the kind of person you are in life. You can be a sensitive person, you can be a strong person, and you can still break down, right? Because we have the tendency to equate breakdown with weakness. We have the tendency to equate crying with weakness. We have the tendency to equate seeking help with weakness. In fact, I need to tell everybody out there that seeking help is one of the bravest thing a human being can do. Because to be so vulnerable, to go to another person and say, I need help, is one of the bravest things a human being can do to another. Right? And this is a bravery which needs to get acknowledged in the society more and more. Right? A lot of times when let's say that there's been a family challenge, somebody's not doing well, and I speak to them, usually the parents come and say, oh, you know what, I didn't want to tell this to my child, मुझे उसको परेशान नहीं करना था. Or the child will say, अरे, I didn't want to tell this to my parents क्योंकि मुझे उनको परेशान नहीं करना था. My main question to them is that फिर रिश्ता बनाया क्यों था? अगर परेशान ही नहीं करना था, then why is this social structure existing? This social structure is existing so we go to each other in the moments of our weakness. Now, why counseling? So yes, a lot of role of counseling can be helped by having good social structures around you, good social support around you. You have good families, you have friends, you have community structures. Yes, you can go to them. But there are times when you actually need a very unbiased person to come into the picture, because whether you like it or not, we are all creatures of our baggages. I have had a certain experience. I'm going to tell you the same experience. So, for example, when a child learns to crawl around the house, and the child is going to, they find a socket, and they get very, very curious about what is there in the socket, and they're going to put their finger in the socket. Now, let's say there's a parent, of course, a very protective parent, who always comes in and says, "Oh my God, don't touch this. Don't look there, you will fall. Don't go there, you're going to hurt yourself. Okay, don't touch this." Here, the child has not gained experience, but the child has understood there's something very, very fearful. But experience अभी भी नहीं आया. हमको experience कब आता है? जब एक बार life में वो गरम चटका लग जाता है. After that, I will never ever go near anything which is hot. Okay, I'm not saying please put your children in those dreadful situations. What I'm trying to say is that we all come from our experiences, and when we come from our experiences, we hold them on so strongly. But that does not mean the other person gets your experience as clearly. Okay. So that is the reason why we go for therapy, is because sometimes your social structures, your social environments either A, are not supportive, or they don't get the challenge that you're coming from. Right. So that whole unbiased view. In fact, the main thing about counseling, I always like to tell people that a counselor is not providing you with solutions. Please leave that idea. Solutions are still coming from you. Okay, solutions are still, because inherently all of us are intelligent human beings. What the counselor is doing is probably creating this conducive environment, this accepting environment, where you come in and you say, you know what, I am this horrible mess right now, and I want to figure out. And then how do we figure out? We look at your resources, we look at your challenges, we look at your strengths, we look at your weaknesses, and then you tell me with this, what are you going to do? What is your best solution? So a counselor only works within the ability of the counselee. They do not sit in judgment and say, oh, you were wrong, or your father was wrong, or your mother was wrong. No, that's not the job of a counselor. The counselor is here to help you dig in a little deeper, make you a little uncomfortable, and find out that, oh my God, you have no idea. You're so fantastic. You already know the answers. Come up with those answers. Implement those answers. I'm there to help you take the next step. So that is what a counselor does. So like you rightly said, we don't need counseling when we have a complete breakdown. Sometimes you go to a counselor because you just need a little resetting. You just need a little perspective on life. Okay. So for example, let's take the example of grief. Now, grief is a very universal concept. At some point of time, we lose people we love. At some point of time, we lose something which was precious to us, and we all go through grief. Now, it is so universal. And everybody knows ye hona hi hai, when your parents age, you will lose your aging parents. And that happens. That's the universal truth. Nobody's been able to escape that. And I still feel challenged. That is also the truth. So when you go to a counselor, you are not expecting the counselor to do some magic and make it all go away. Neither are you expecting the counselor to erect the dead. They are not going to do any of that. What are they doing? They're only helping you come. They're asking you to break down as much as you break down. Then they're asking you to not just stay broken. They're helping you find those resources around you which will help you come back again. Find those little glimmers in your life to look forward to. Find those little motivations in your life to start implementing. That is what a counselor does, So counseling should not be just looked at as that final stage when everything gets broken. Sometimes, in fact, it's much better to seek counseling support when you start feeling like something is off, something is not working. In fact, that's the best time to actually go to a counselor, because there your resources are still intact.
I genuinely believe that counseling, access to mental health professionals, access to counselors, access to a good support system is so vital that it can probably help you overcome any situation before it becomes worse, before it becomes like a do or die situation. It can help you prevent dire consequences, right? If preventive methods are taken, as they say, prevention is better than cure, right? It's just that we shake off the situations by saying, no, I'll handle it.
I'm supposed to handle it. More than that, it's like I'm supposed to do it.
Exactly. I'm supposed to do myths that we all have been born and brought up with, like, especially for males, all the males on the call, I can say, I can vouch on your behalf that a lot of men or kids have been, boy kids who are now males, have been told that don't cry. Crying is a virtue of girls. You are a man or a boy. You can't cry. So what happens is men end up bottling emotions, right? And one of the outlet for them is a drink, maybe a smoke, right? Or maybe something else, because they're like, okay, I'm me, myself, I'll handle it, versus actually going to a counselor, breaking these myths, being vulnerable, shedding a tear if you're like too weak, or, there is some reason for you to shed a tear, right? And this is where I think so there is some outlet to it, Now, just taking a next step here, before we come to your nuggets on practical implementations, how can people recover, right, and rebuild resilience after experiencing, say, significant setbacks? Like, I can talk for myself, right? What happened like approximately 3.5 months ago, right?
Right.
I lost the most important person in my life, my father, right? It took me 2 weeks to come to terms with it, right? I was completely disoriented for those 2 weeks. Disoriented is an understatement. I didn't realize what date is it, what time is it, is it afternoon, is it evening? You know, People were talking to me, and I should just look at them with no responses. And then, obviously after having a session with you, I kind of picked myself, and I'm still picking myself. Let me call it that way, right? But for all the 178 people who joined on this call, how can they pick themselves up? How can they build resilience, especially after after they've just got a setback, or they're recovering from a setback, right? It could be failing in exams for a student, missing out on some medical or massive competitive entrances, any business loss, any something else. So what's your take on that?
Yeah. So, when we talk about rebuilding, of course, everybody is going to come with their own pain points. They're going to come with their own stories. And it's very difficult to really, and they're going to come with their own personalities to the rebuilding too. Let's be honest about it. They're going to come with their own resources to it too. Okay. So it's very difficult to create a very specific design plan which is applicable across the population. That, this is a template and this is how we rebuild and recover. But what I always tell any of my counselees out there when they tell me that I'm stuck right now, or I'm in this whole mess right now and I don't know what to do, the first and easiest thing for anybody out there is to bring the focus back to you, because that's the only person and the only thing in this world that you control. Okay, so very forcefully, very purposefully bring the focus to you. When I say bring the focus to you, it means that you need to start understanding what is it that I need to do for myself right now. Do I need to go for a walk? Do I need to drink some water? Do I need to talk to somebody? What is it that I need right now? That's all your entire entire focus area should only be you. The entire spotlight needs to be turned on you at that moment. There is absolutely no point in trying to now, go through the dark, find out your resources, because you're going to falter. You are in a mess. Okay. So the number one thing is, of course, bring the focus completely to you. What can I do to support myself right now? That should be the key focus area. Once you start doing that, so remember when we talk about the physical and the mental resilience for it, when you're stuck in such a big mess, when you're stuck with stressors all around, look at your physical health to be the anchor which holds everything together. Okay, because that is how they work with each other. That is the relationship they share with each other. How do I take care of myself in the best possible way right now? So I can focus on my food right now, I can focus on my hydration, I can focus on my walk, I can focus on my sleep. Yes, tomorrow the world is ending, but right now this is what I can do. I have zero control over what will happen to the world when I wake up. Okay. The second thing that you can do from here, so first is always this, there is no other point to start, or there's no other start point for anything. The second point I think we all should focus our energies on is the next step only. That's it. So for example, if it's a student and there's an exam coming up, and instead of focusing on ki, oh my god, what will happen if I fail the exam, the money gone, the chances gone, what do I do next? The next step is, today's my exam, what should I do now? Which is the question I'm supposed to focus on. Is my bag ready to walk into the exam center? Do I have a transportation available to take me to the exam center? Your smallest next step. That's it. And once you start putting that one foot in front of the other as slowly as possible, you'll realize that somewhere through the movement, you actually reach where you want to reach. It happens. Rather than being stuck with the idea of trying to control those 10 steps right ahead, that outcome 1 year ahead, that result 1 month ahead, look at your next step, which is visible right now, which is controllable right now. So number one, physical health. Number two, your next smallest step ahead. That's it. So this is something I ask anybody with any problem to start from.
Interesting. Interesting. I'll just leave the floor open for some questions coming my way. And before I ask the most important segment of our chat, which is the implementation strategies, right? Or practical strategies, right? Okay, coming to some simple daily implementable steps, Bhavna, right? What can folks on this call do on a daily basis, or small practices that can be very effective either in preempting stress or reducing stress or building better resilience, right? Or better mechanisms. Something which is as simple as consuming your meal, right? What's your take on that? Is there something that somebody can start from a basic level and then graduate, and he doesn't feel intimidated that, oh, okay, it's too much to do, right? What's your take on that?
Okay. So can we have the next slide, Rhythm? I think I've just enlisted out there for ease of access and ease of understanding with everybody. It's the second slide. Yes. Yes. So for me, when I talk about some practical strategies which any person can start implementing with any sort of stressor, with any sort of challenges right now, is this list. Okay. So number one, it starts with the practice of gratitude. No matter where you are stuck, no matter who you're feeling challenged with or where you're feeling challenged in life, there is always something small that you can be grateful for. Even that roof over your head, even that bed that you sleep on, you will find something to say a gratitude prayer for. So always start or end your day with three things that you feel grateful for. Because of this gratitude, you will shift the wiring of your brain to look for solutions rather than problems. Okay, so these are all scientifically established methodologies, right? The other one is mindful breathing. So breath is the only voluntary bodily function which has a direct effect on stress. There is no other body function that you can control. Breath is your only body function that you can control. Right. Next time when you're stressed, just make a note. Make a note of how quickly you breathe, how shallow your breath is every time you're challenged. When you're aware of that, the next best thing to do is to slow down your breathing, to make it deeper. Okay, so this is called mindful breathing. Mindful breathing has a huge impact on your nervous system. It has a huge impact on reducing your anxiety so that for that moment your mind gets clear on what needs to be done next. The third thing that people can use as a strategy is designing the circuit of control or the circle of control for themselves. Like we discussed earlier, when I look at a problem, when I look at a challenge, when I look at a stressor, I should be able to define very clearly that what part of that problem is under my control and what part of the problem is completely out of my control. Okay, so for a student who's giving an exam, what part of the stressor is under his control? The effort that they put in, the subjects that they focus on, the skill that they develop during the exam, that part is under their control. What is not under their control? What questions are going to come in the paper? What will be the mood of the examiner while he's correcting their paper? What will be the what if their paper tears out there or is not reaching the exam? They have no control over that aspect of it. So bring your focus to your circle of control. Next, engage in this talk that we talked about, right? That criticism. Be aware how you are talking to yourself at any given point of time. Are you talking to yourself saying, "Oh my God, mere saath hamesha aise hi hota hai. The world is so unfair with me all the time." Is that the talk you are having, or is the talk about, what? Okay, I've handled challenges before. I don't know the solution right now, but I'm sure I'll find something to move ahead. What is the kind of self talk you're having? That is very, very important, because once you're aware of it, you'll be able to shift the kind of talk you're having, because nothing is always bad. Nothing is so drastically bad that it's the end of the world, right? Then we come to then we come to moving your body, another extremely important aspect. Sometimes I tell people that when you can't remember any of the strategies, this is one strategy, just pick up and use. Get moving, get out, go for that walk. Okay, when you're having a huge conflict, when you're having a huge confrontation, when you're feeling a surge of anger, when you're feeling a surge of helplessness, when you're feeling a surge of sadness or guilt or anything coming and you don't know what to do about it, get up and move your body. Okay, your body will help you release that excess unsolvable energy out of your body. It'll bring in that calm to your breath also, and then you start managing your problem. So please understand, these strategies are not about solving the problem. These strategies are about equipping you to solve the problem. Okay,
Exactly.
this is just something. So for example, when you go underwater diving, how do you take that oxygen gear on your backs, right? And then you go for the diving. These strategies are those. Diving karna padega, challenge ko face karna padega, but now you're equipped with an oxygen tank. So these are the oxygen tanks that you use when you're faced with a challenge.
Makes sense. Makes sense. You know, I'm, actually bombarded with a lot of questions in my chat window. So I'll cherry pick few of them, right? And I'll just pick probably 3 or 4 because there are a bunch of them. I see a question coming from Tarun. Does cutting out or reducing social media, TV news, exploring yourself more and connecting with nature help in building internal resilience? Right? Seems too much noise around us makes us more anxious. What's your take on that?
Yeah. So I don't think that's a does it not question anymore, because I think there's enough research which has gone into supporting the fact that yes, social media consumption has impacted the way we experience life. It has impacted our expectations out of life. It has impacted our expectations out of problems. Okay.
Yes.
So of course it impacts. Secondly, this has become the go-to way of avoiding problems. When we talk about procrastination today, one of the biggest tools for procrastination is social media scrolling. So it's both ways. It's also adding to your stress, plus it's not letting you find a solution. When we talk about nature, there's something known as grounding effect. There's something known as forest bathing, where you actually go out in nature, where you put your physical self surrounded by nature, where you find that excess energy, excess stressors being released from your body. Again, it's not that they give you solutions. It's like that muddy water settles and then you find solutions. So this is what nature does to us. In fact, a bigger part of our stressor today is this huge disconnect from nature, which has ended up happening. We live in, these skyscrapers out there where people are very proud. Oh, I'm living very close to the clouds out, but you forget that you've also moved very away from your actual grounding, your actual people. That silence. In fact, there's research which says that on people who live on higher floors, cut off from all noise, in fact may experience high levels of anxiety too.
Whoa, that's a good one.
Yes. So of course nature has a healing way, because nature has been our evolutionary way of living, and we are doing something very, very artificial right now with the way our lives are structured. So of course, cutting down on social media and all of this helps. I think the bigger question is how, not whether we should or not. How do we cut down on social
Yes.
media?
How and how much,
Correct.
No,
True. So
makes
I hope
sense.
I've answered your question.
No, makes sense. I see a question coming here where pretty simple, but I'm sure it has a lot of depth to it. Difference between stress and pressure is not clear, and can they be used interchangeably?
Okay. So, firstly, let me tell you, stress is not a negative connotation word. Pressure definitely is. Okay. So, stress has its role to play in our body. We wouldn't be evolving, we wouldn't be surviving if we had no stress. So, stress is required for your evolution, whether it's required for your physical evolution, even the weights that you lift in a gym are stress. That's how you build the muscles. Okay. So, stress is a required part of your being. Chronic stress is where the challenge comes in. Pressure is how you internalize this stress. Now, stress is going to be there. Pressure is your perception of it. So the stressor can be the same. How much pressure I feel will be different for every single person out there. Okay. So that's the difference between stress and pressure. Although pressure is not really a scientific terminology, nobody really talks of pressure as a feeling. People usually talk of stress and pressure as an equated remark. But stress is something that needs to be accepted. In fact, I tell people that stress is your body's way of coping with whatever has happened. So stress is not bad. If we had no stress, those hormones would not be released in your body to know whether I need to fight, or I need to fly off, or I need to hide. We wouldn't be doing that. We would be very happy meals for the dinosaurs, and by now we would be extinct. Okay. So you needed that stress to tell you, look out, watch out. So never be afraid that there is a stress, but the pressure you feel, if that is getting out of hand, that's a signal that you're unable to manage whatever is the stressor in your environment. So this is how you differentiate between pressure and stress.
Interesting perspectives.
Yeah.
I have a question from MR Shanai. He's saying, or rather, he's asking, do religion beliefs help or hamper in coping, right? Stress. And can you suggest daily activity regime to improve? So he's bringing the religious belief aspect. He's bringing the religious belief structure that we all face at some point of time. How much of that do they influence stress?
Yeah. So when we talk about religion, I think what we really need to focus on is how do we apply that religion to our daily living. Okay. Am I talking about rituals, or am I talking about religion? Right. Now both can have an impact. So I know of certain rituals, for example, chanting mantras. I know of rituals where you will sit, you will do your, the sweet little processes you will do while bathing your god and dressing your god and lighting that agarbatti. It can have a hugely relieving attribute, because for that moment you do tend to forget what you're doing, and you're just focused on that act of performing the puja. Okay, so rituals have their own place. Religion teaches us on the bigger meaning of life. It teaches us on, what have been the general viewpoints on how to lead a good life. Okay, so what aspect of it you pick up now? If you're using religion as a pressure source, or you're being subjected to that pressure, it's a different thing. If it is coming as a conflict for you, that is where I think the issue comes in, where maybe, let's say, your religious belief doesn't match with somebody else's religious belief. But at the end of the day, I believe that religion, how you practice religion, is a very personal affair. You know, I may practice my religion very, very differently. It may just include meditation. Somebody else may practice religion very, very differently. It may involve a lot of reading, a lot of exploration. So religion, mental health, spirituality, all of them. Again, at the end of the day, you are made up of all these components. So whether it hampers you or it helps you is something that you need to judge for yourself. How has your experience with your religion, with your religious experiences been till now? The religion is not doing anything to you. It's how you are experiencing it, or how you're being made to experience it, which should be evaluated.
Brilliant. No, thanks, Bhavna. I'll take a last question because we just a little overshot of time. There's a question by Sunil. He said, how would one explain the stress before someone starts handling the issues of kids between age 6 to 12, right? So maybe toddlership, growing up a toddler is what he's talking about. So he's saying that how do parents equip themselves? Because parents may be stressed that, oh, my toddler is about to enter his teens. Maybe they're anxious and there's some stress answers that he's looking for.
Interesting, because a large part of my clientele is actually parents of teens, right? So this is something I always tell any parent whose child is growing into the teenage years, that developmentally they are at an age where they are supposed to challenge you. It's part of evolution. It's part of their development that they have to challenge you. Okay, so don't be afraid that your teen is challenging you. What your teen needs right now is for you to show that mental resilience, is for you to show that emotional regulation, so that they keep learning. They can't push your buttons, but they see that this is how my parent responds. This is the response that I need to imbibe. So, in fact, it's a bigger challenge for you to stay who you are rather than keeping the teen the way they are. Okay, they are supposed to question you, they are supposed to rebel, because this is how they now explore the world. So it's a part of their evolution, it's a part of their development. Most times today, I think the disconnect that happens is that parents believe in a very set format that a child should interact with them, and that will not happen. And the more you hold on to this, the more your teen gets distant from you. The more you're accommodative with this new personality that's come in, the more you try to work with them on it, the more you, like I said, the more stability you show to what they are going through hormonally, physically, socially, the more the teen absorbs that this is how you exhibit emotional resilience. This is how you exhibit emotions. This is how you exhibit control. So it's a learning phase for them, but they're learning it in a different way. They're learning it by challenging you, right? So I think it's a bigger job for parents to know that no, I have to be that raft in the storm right now, which holds on things for my team. The team will be the storm. It's their job to be the storm for you right now.
Interesting. Uh, Excellent perspectives, Dr. Bhavna. As in, I personally learned a lot. My perspectives have improved after hearing your responses, right? And your explanation. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. On behalf of AIMA YLC and the 178 people who have joined, right? Thank you so much for taking out time. I would like to call out Ridhim Malik specifically, right? Because she's been the backbone of YLC. She's helped put this up together, right? So thank you, Ridhim Malik, for having us, selecting this topic, right? And thank you, Dr. Bhavna, once again. Brilliant. As in, it's been
Thank
an
you so much.
awakening for a lot of people, and I walk away with a lot of learning of the different perspectives on what is stress, what is pressure, what is religion, what is ritual, right? How to deal with it, teenage, etc. Brilliant, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was an absolute delight and pleasure. Thank you for your great questions. It shows that everybody is very, very engaged with it right now. So thank you so much for that.
Great, thank you so much. And everybody, whoever wants to connect with Dr. Bhavna, her email ID is here. Find her on Instagram, find her on LinkedIn, right? Drop her an email, and then you can have better and more and deeper sessions with her directly. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and thank you, Dr. Bhavna, once again. Take care.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
Thank you, Nat.
Bye.
Thank you everyone for joining us today.